Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, promo code STAPLE20.
Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. The Education Department's Office of Civil Rights has seen increasing numbers of complaints filed over the past 10 years, and thousands are from the same individual. Joining me to discuss this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, the Office of Civil Rights has requested more funding to handle its increase in cases. Walk us through the numbers. How have these increased in the past 10 years, and how many of these are coming from the same person?
Yeah, Eliana, that's a great question. So what I can tell you is in 2013, since between 2013 and 2023, the Office of Civil Rights, those who work for the Office of Civil Rights, like these investigators into these complaints, their workload has more than doubled. So like their caseload of like what they're handed every year, that's more than doubled according to the fiscal year 2025 budget request. So when you start looking at these documents, these are to Congress saying, hey, we need more money to support our agency. And this is why, right? Like, let's look at like what we're doing. It's sort of like, telling your boss, hey, you should give me a pay raise because we're doing a good job, right? But we need more to do the same kind of thing. Or like my team needs more money to get the same kind of work done. So it's sort of like, if you think about it that way, like in the private sector, like if you had if you're a manager, you're pitching your boss and saying, hey, like, look at my team, they're doing a great job, but they're being overworked. So let's get some more people to help them out. So like, that's essentially what's going on here. And essentially saying like, hey, we have had an increase in cases. So like, we've seen like, 19,000 cases in the last fiscal year, but we only have 200 staff. And I'm trying to remember the exact number of staff, but we only have like 200 staff. So like it's a crazy high amount of cases per staff. And that has more than doubled since 2013. So in the last 10 fiscal years, that's gone up dramatically, right? But as you mentioned, some of these cases are coming from individuals, and that's been a perennial problem. And so it's something that's actually changed over time. From what I can tell, there used to be a lot of disability discrimination allegations, like these reports coming in saying, hey, somebody was discriminated against based on a disability. And that's since changed. And so the majority of these complaints coming in from one person, from a sole individual, those are actually about sex discrimination now. So in the last few years, there's been a shift over from disability to sex discrimination. So these were filed, the majority of these complaints in fiscal year 2023 were about Title IX. They're related to sex discrimination.
And weren't the majority of the sex discrimination complaints this past year all by the same person? Like, what were the numbers there?
So yeah, in fiscal year 2023, a single individual filed 5,590 complaints raising sex discrimination allegations. And that's directly from the Office of Civil Rights' annual report, which I covered last week as well. And of those, nearly 69% of complaints related to allegations of sex-based discrimination were filed by that one individual. So that was like almost, that's more than 2/3 of all of the complaints were filed by one person. Right. So this person is prolific, 15 cases a day, and you're not taking breaks for holidays. So yeah, pretty high number of complaints from one individual in 2023.
How did the Trump administration attempt to address this issue of complaints from the same person? Yeah,
that's a great question. So essentially, they were going to change up what is called the case processing manual. And that determines how investigators handle discrimination complaints. And so they were going to change it to basically allow investigators to filter out complaints filed by the same person. So if somebody has like a pattern of repeated complaints, you can say, and they don't have merit. So maybe like you're saying, like somebody's just spamming us. How do we filter that? We were able to filter it out because of who they are. So it would basically change like this inner agency manual on like how to handle things.
And how did critics respond to that attempted change?
So basically, Catherine Lamont, she led the Office of Civil Rights under former President Barack Obama. She was at the time, the former Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, and she was saying, hey, this is not what the Office of Civil Rights is for. The agency needs to be open to all complaints, and it doesn't matter who is issuing the complaints or how many times somebody files this. We need to be listening to all of them. So she basically said, the thing that scares me is when they get to say we won't open some cases because it's too much for us. She told the New York Times that, or we don't like the complainant, or it's not our week to work on that. So she said that when you do that, you change the character of the office. And so this was in 2018 as the Department of Education Undersecretary DeVos was considering this change and basically said, you can't do that without changing the function of the Office of Civil Rights. And so that was some of the major backlash there is like, if you start changing the manual, then you sort of change the office. And she also said, there's not a limitation on justice and there's not a limitation on how we perceive injustice. And to say you've reached your quota is to say that there's somehow a cap on the number of children who might be harmed. So basically, like, you can't limit how many times somebody can complain to the Office of Civil Rights about potential discrimination or, alleged violations of federal statutes.
And so what did budget reports show about how these cases are assigned?
So this fiscal year 2025 budget request, it basically showed that there is a distinction between the total number of cases, which is 19,201 total complaints filed in the fiscal year 2023, and then the 13,628 complaints that were received and proactive investigations that were launched. So essentially, there is a distinction between the number of complaints and then the number of cases that were worked on by staff. So there was only 13,628, which is about that 6,000 mark. So if you look at it, it's only 27 cases off of like that 5,900 and change complaints that were filed by that single individual. And so when I asked the Office of Civil Rights about it, they basically said that those get those from the individual complainant, as is the technical term there, they get a routine response, right? So it's not exactly clear, but it seems like there's a difference in the caseload, right? That there's 19,000 complaints and then there's 13,000 cases, right, that are being worked on by staff where they're assigned to staff. So there is that 6,000 difference. So it's kind of raises questions about, are those, and the Office of Civil Rights says that it investigates every complaint it receives, but it also in budget documents says that those are not being handed to staff and that it's a clearer picture of the workload to focus on that 13,000. So it starts raising those kinds of questions about what that routine response looks like and how that calculation is kind of created, right, in terms of the caseload. So and again, the Office of Civil Rights says that it excludes the individual complainant's complaints from the calculation of caseloads per staff. So that it's just an interesting thing, especially too when you're asking for money, right? You're saying Secretary of Education Cardona asked Congress for more money, and he said we're getting 19,000 cases. But then you look at it, and you're seeing, okay, well, their actual workload is 13,000, which again, still very high, still double over fiscal year 2013. But it's sort of a more nuanced picture when you start looking at the minutia of these budget documents.
Well, thank you, Brendan, for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Greedy corporate mega stores, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a law in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, tell your lawmakers, hands off my rewards. Tell them to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
Hey, small business leaders. Have you ever thought there's got to be an easier way to do all this busy work? With JustWorks all-in-one platform, you can check all the boxes, run payroll in 90 seconds, access premium benefits, take care of tax reports, and even hire internationally through JustWorks EOR. Any questions? Reach out to expert staff for real human support. Plus, transparent pricing guaranteed. Visit justworks.com/podcast to join the thousands of small businesses that trust JustWorks to take care of payroll, benefits, compliance, and more.